I just got out of class and on world religions. How fun. And the girl next to me was saying she can't believe how many people are voting democratically, or are a Democrat. She is, I would have to say, a conservative, fundamentalist Christian. Very sweet person until you bring up politics or religion, and then but in also listening to the people around us, it keeps striking me as odd, and I suppose I was one of those people that didn't really know what was going on earlier, and so I can't really give them too much of a hard time, but it seems they don't realize that we're not a democracy. I've seen several YouTubers saying this, but we're not a democracy. We are a republic. If 100% of your votes, the popular vote, went for Obama, and the majority of the electoral vote, the Electoral College, went to McCain, McCain would win. That's it. Now, if I'm wrong about that, I would love somebody to correct me. But from what I've done in my research, I found that that's pretty much the way it is. If you want to change that, you have to, at first, or initially, either change the whole system, or make sure your representative that you vote in, not during the presidential election, but the previous elections, the elections on your representatives, Congress, Senate, those guys, that's where you need to make your serious decision on who you want them to vote for. And since there's no candidates necessarily when you're doing that vote, it's fairly safe for them to just say what they want, and you can be a Republican or you be a Democrat, as if there's a difference. But you can't say, oh, I'm going to elect Congressman X because he's for Obama, say, because there is no Obama at that particular time. If there's anything, there's going to be a whole mess of people that you could never even, at that time, choose from. So manipulation at that point is still fairly easy by the man, the government. Changing systems, I believe, is what is going to happen with the invention or the effectiveness of the internet and things like YouTube and MySpace and all the other web pages that you can get together and talk with each other, record things and preserve it. Politicians can no longer just lie. I mean, 50 years ago, if they said one thing in one town and another thing in another town, you wouldn't have known unless you had followed them from town to town. The mass media isn't going to follow that and go, oh, well, we want McCain, but he said this here, and then he said the opposite here. Oh, we're just not going to say that. Because they want their candidate to win. And the media does play a large role, so you can't just watch media, the mass media. You have to watch things like YouTube and read articles in the newspaper, lots of newspapers. You have to pay attention to what's going on, or else you'll have no idea what's going on. That sounded kind of redundant. And the only real way to change isn't by, and this is sort of directed at Lorna Vamp. I didn't really have anything set aside for this, so I'm kind of scrambled. I believe, and I could be wrong, taking a quote from a good friend, I could be wrong, but the only way to change isn't from the top down. You can't elect a congressman or a president and expect them to change the world. If everybody's going, we want alcohol, we want drugs, and you elect a congressman that's saying no, drugs should be legal and there is no alcohol because, you know, the Sabbath and or whatever reason, alcohol is evil and it has the sins. You elect that congressman or the president that says that. How well did it work for alcohol and drugs? Do we have less alcohol and drugs now? Is there a prohibition? Drugs are illegal, but are less people doing them? I don't think so. The only way that change happens is when the masses want it to happen. And the only reason that, the only way to convince the masses is, of course, through things like the major medias, CNN, Fox, but also, but I shouldn't say also, but more effective is when you go down to the grocery store and you hear somebody talking about, oh, you know, this person did this, and oh, I don't like him because he's a Muslim, and you can kind of get a balance of who thinks what, and then ask them why they think that and where they got that. And you go to your local tavern and they're talking politics and religion all the time. You're not supposed to in mixed company. I think that was also a government issue. Don't talk about it. But you have to talk about it. And when you start talking about it, you start to understand what's working and what's not. And you can't just take, oh, God said so, so that's the way it is. When, obviously, religion says one thing and people do another. Always. That's always been the way. You have any super conservative religion, and you can't follow that stuff. So there's laws for God, and there's laws for people, and they have to be separate. Lorna Vamp, you were talking about the church has better influence than I could. Really? The church advocates abstinence. How well has that worked? I mean, they really push it. That's the only way. There's either marriage and you have sex, or no sex if you're not married. If the church was actually successful at instigating that belief or that change, there wouldn't be anybody left on the planet. There would be nobody having sex, except those small portions that get married, and that's not enough to keep the planet going. So the church does make changes, but not in the way you think it does. The church makes suggestions, and then the congregation amongst themselves actually decide what they do. So the only way to make a change is at the bottom, people talking to each other. And I don't think our current system is going to do it, and I do see in the near future, in the next 20 years, on the outside, a complete governmental change, a change of system. If you have a different view, I'd love to hear it. And if you can say it more coherently than I have, I would definitely love to hear it better.